In this lecture, I will show you how you could apply the principles of processes mapping to a particular situation. And as an example, I'm choosing to tell you a story about Scrum framework events. So this lecture is Scrum events, process map example. I work as an agile coach, and I have to explain Scrum framework and its events quite a lot. I do that in trainings, I do that in targeted coaching sessions with my teams and individuals I work with. And visual thinking is the best way to tell the story about that, because then you could create a customized explanation. You could tailor that to the context of where you are with that team or individual. And I'll just show you also that the process map not necessarily has to be like totally linear. And since Scrum is a framework explaining an iterative and incremental process, I like to use the circle instead of just a straight line as the foundation for it, because when you use a circle, you can also explain that something is repeating and reoccurring. So when I do that, I start by drawing a large circle in the middle of the page, something looking like this. And again, if it doesn't look like a perfect circle, that is fine. It doesn't have to be. And that's what I like about visual thinking. It's not about perfection, it's about the content and the idea behind it. So I don't feel bad about the circle not looking like a circle, and you shouldn't either. Focus on what's important, on the idea you're trying to convey. And then, because Scrum framework implementation tends to be based on 2 weeks iterations, I say that one circle, one loop is one Scrum iteration, and it's 2 weeks. So I split it in 2 parts here, and then I specifically break it down into days to avoid misunderstanding how the events are spread across and along the timeline. And I specifically say that these are days, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on, with Monday starting on the 2nd week, Wednesday, and then, okay, I messed it up a bit. So it was supposed to be Tuesday here, and Wednesday here, and then Thursday, and then Friday. But that's okay, again. I don't mind making mistakes. We'll learn from them. So I say this is one given iteration of the Scrum framework, and I could even write it here like 2 weeks sprint. And then I continue by saying that each iteration, each sprint, starts with a sprint planning. And I put a connection here, and I draw a large ball here as a visualization for the event happening on that day. And I say this is a sprint planning. And I say that something is happening there, and I use icons and pictograms to provide a short description of the essence of what's happening during the sprint planning. So I draw a person, usually that is supposed to be a product owner, who took something from the backlog, and I draw a dotted circle here because it's not there anymore. Also suggesting that we take the top priority item. And I also draw a group of people, anxious, something is happening, we're discussing something, and that thingy is put into sprint. Basically, we say that product owner advises us on the priority, but the team decides what's going into sprint and what's not, and this is an ongoing discussion. And I could even provide some short descriptions on what's happening there, but I will not do that. I will skip that part in order to speed up the lecture, but I could have done that if I wanted to. What I also add is that the timeline for this event is usually 1-2 hours, and the participants of that are the PO, product owner, SM, Scrum Master, and the developers, people who compose the team. And then we say that after we have started the sprint, we have the recurring event happening every day except for the first and the last day of the sprint. And we show that by placing that ball and mapped it to every day after the first day of the sprint. And it's actually happening every day. And we're very specific about it. And we combine those into a thread so that it's easy to see visually that they are of the same nature, they're combined. And then I say that this event here is called daily check-in. And I use the icon of a calendar to explain that this is happening daily. And by the way, I didn't use the icon there because it happens once, so I don't want to overload the information with some extra details that are not super important. But here, since it's really repeating, and if it's not clear yet, I want to have it there, so we are avoiding misunderstanding with the audience. And then I say that during the daily check-in, we basically observe our progress with the team, and we see how fast are we progressing, where are we stuck, and I provide that with the icon of a person standing next to something like a Kanban board and the rest of the team looking at that. And I would also use some details in the bottom explaining that if I wanted to, but I will not do it right now. I also put an icon for the duration, and I say it's supposed to be a very short meeting, so we are not bogged down in the details, but we only focus on what is distracting us from progressing, and are we in a good shape. And then we could of course discuss things offline if we wanted to, but we really want to keep it fast and focused, so we say 15 minutes. And as far as who participates there, we say Scrum Master and developers at least, and then they can invite other people if they have the need to discuss something with those people. In the end of the sprint, we have an event called a sprint review. And what is happening there is that we would like to really inspect what we have actually created during the sprint, and we want to look at those things. We want to collect some feedback, but we also want to have a solid proof of our progress, and also to see how those things we have delivered are working. And that's why I usually draw a screen, because most of the time the teams are working with the technology products, virtual products that can be touched by just looking at them on the screen or on a mobile device. So usually those are software programs. And I'm just showing through the use of the icon that we would like to actually see what we have delivered in the sprint. And then I say that the duration is for the team to decide, 1 to 2 hours. And who is going to be there? It's a product owner, Scrum Master, developers, and plus optionally anyone interested. And we're talking about people like stakeholders who might be interested in seeing what happened and provide their feedback and cheer the team up for great results. And then there is another event happening on the last day of the sprint, usually after the review. And that event is called Sprint Retro. But what is happening there is the team gathers to inspect their process and discuss what is working not so well and how it could be improved. And they want to make sure that the continuous improvement is there and the learning culture is there. And that's the kind of discussion which is happening there. And we can also say that the duration is up for the team to decide, but it's 1 to 2 hours usually. And again, it's everyone, product owner, Scrum Master, and the devs, the developers. And then during the sprint, there is another event that is critical for the team to maintain the backlog and make sure that they're constantly working with the new ideas. And that is something which is called the backlog refining session. And it might happen 1-2 times per sprint, and it might happen in the first week or in the second, doesn't matter. So we could, for example, place it here on Tuesday, or like, okay, so I got confused here. So this is Tuesday here. So we could put it here, and then we could write something down like a sprint backlog refinement session. And what is happening there is that the product owner, together with the team, they're looking into new ideas, they're looking into new challenges, and then they try to understand how that impacts the backlog, how it impacts the roadmap of the product, and they have a good discussion around that. And it might be 1-2 times per sprint, and the duration could be 1 to 2 hours. And that concludes the explanation of a quite complex process, and it's becoming a bit too overcrowded. So when you are working with paper or on a flip chart, applying shadows here could help you get away from the information overload, because then it will be easier for the audience to differentiate icons from the supporting text. And I will just quickly apply shadows to demonstrate that effect to you. And once you have applied shadows and you now see how it helped you to split the information in 2 virtual layers, the hard parts like icons now being like popped up, elevating above the main surface where the details with the text are hidden. And now it's easier to see where we should apply color to help further split that into virtual layers. So I would apply a color as the lines below the main events, making it easier to find them, and then maybe you even can see now how it helps to quickly differentiate them from the rest of the information available on the map. And maybe I could even apply some kind of a highlight on the balls that depict the actual events themselves, so it's easier to kind of look into them and find them quickly. And I would stop here, because applying more color would probably make it more difficult to navigate. But that's the example of how you could use process mapping to a particular, in application to a particular situation. And I hope that inspires you to find out how you could apply process mapping to your individual context. So get ready for the next part, which is the assignment.